In this episode, we go from this to this in the continuation of the bridge build. Oh, and it wasn't plain sailing. Welcome back to Halton Warren OO9. I'm Mark, and as I say, trying to get this structure built for the bridge was a bit of a nightmare, shall we say. It wasn't easy, but in a second we'll get straight into doing the build of the structure. First of all though, I was talking to one of the people who watch this channel, and the question came up, why do you watch it? So was it because it's about railways, because model railways, because you're interested in modelling, or the modelling as an art craft? But no, the reason she gave was the fact it helps her to get to sleep. So thank you, Chloe. I'm glad you find my video so boring. But yeah, let's hope you enjoy this one a bit more. Anyway, let's get back onto the videos and show you what we did with this bridge build. One of the first considerations was what material I was going to use to make this out of, and the first thought was plywood, because it's robust, it's strong. The weather will affect it slightly, the dampness down here, but I thought that's probably the best material to use. Now when it's this length, it is a little bit flexible, but not very flexible. Now you can cut lines down it or score lines through it, which will help. But I'm just wondering, on some of the bends, would it actually snap? So I think it's a bit too brittle for what I wanted to use. So the next choice was obviously cardboard, which I've been using to make the mock-up. It's thick, it's fairly robust. You can bend it very, very easily, especially this corrugated stuff, and it tends to stay in place as well. Now that, or some thick mounting card like this, yeah, it's easy to manipulate, easy to glue on, but as I say, it's damp down here, and how long would this last? I didn't want it delaminating or just bubbling up and then the brick fascia coming off it. So cardboard was out the window. So the next thought was photo mounting or picture mounting board. Now this is about 5mm, and it's got a foam insert in it, and I thought I could get one that had a plastic skim on it. But I couldn't. I looked everywhere, and they're all cardboard, so I've got the same problem. Although again, this is fairly rigid and fairly not that bendy, you can score lines through it again, or cut lines into it. You can get a little tool as well that does your V cut, which helps it to bend better. But if I use this and then stuck my brick plastic card brick on it, would it then, once the damp got into this cardboard, would it start to peel away? Over time I think it probably would. So mounting board was out of the way, which left me with one real option, I suppose. Now this is a stuff called Foamex. It's very similar to the mounting board I've just shown you. It's got a very fine plastic foam in the middle of it, but this is covered with plastic either side. As you can see, it's fairly flexible, it's easy to cut, and I think this is going to be the ideal material. It's quite expensive, I suppose. You're looking, it's more expensive than cardboard. It's probably on a par with the plywood, but this is going to be more durable, I think. I've got to have a play with it, because I've also got to work out what are the best glues, and I've got a number of glues, and we'll give them a try and see which one works best. Now I've got that out of the way as well, what I've done is just made myself this little bench. It's a bit of what, 6mm ply, I think it is, bit of a board around it, and a new cutting mat. And the reason it doesn't go up to the edges is if I'm cutting something long, I use a metre long rule, which is hung up on the wall here. And as you can see, it's just under a metre, so if I want to cut something fairly long, I need the gaps at the end to be able to put that in. Anyway, this has been a godsend. I've done so much cutting out. It's a nice height for me. It just rests on the baseboards of the railway, it works at the moment, because by the time I landscape this is not going to work, but I might put some legs on it, some brackets, so it can sit above the baseboard. Anyway, that's enough of that. The next stage is to rebuild this, which is a shame because I'm quite happy with that. If I could just get away with covering that in the brick paper or even plastic hard brick, I would, but I can't, because as I say, it gets damp down here and this would just fall apart within weeks, you know, maybe even days. So I've got to rebuild this, as I say, out of Foamex, and hopefully that will be a structure that will stay in place for years to come. You might notice that this mock-up is not the same as the one that we finished in the last video. So why is that? Well, there's a number of reasons. One, there's a line here, I don't know if it comes up on the video or not, but this line here is where the original mock-up finished. Now the reason it finished there is this sits on the baseboard. But on the baseboard comes here, there's a slight step down, and then there's a big step down. And it comes across and it goes back up, and then it goes up to here where the track bed is for the upper level. Then it drops down again into the track bed for the lower level. But then there's another gap, which is here, and then that gap finishes. So I've extended these down, and the idea is that that will help locate, so that when this module is put back into place, it will help it locate. Now it still might move a bit, although the scenery will come up to it as well and will help lock it in. But I will be putting some dowels in, some lining dowels, and to help secure this once I make the model up. The next change is these arches. Now, because I kept trimming them to make sure I could get the coach through there, they ended up as a slightly odd shape. Now that wasn't very pleasing, and my brain went kind of into work mode. I used to be in property management, and things, you just get an eye for things, and it kind of niggles at you. Now, in the real world, you wouldn't build an arch out of brick and have a nice form curve on one side, then you get a flat area, and then it drop down again on the other side. Why wouldn't you do that? Well, the forces on a real bridge come down onto the arch, and then the arch is designed so those forces are evenly distributed into the ground. If you've got a flat bit in here, once you put your force down here, that is a weak point, and it will either pop up or pop down. Now that's in real life, and this isn't real life, I know, but you know, it's just one of those niggles. It's something you look at thinking that's not right, and it wouldn't work in real life. And just to settle my mind, I had to get it a bit tidier, a bit neater, if you like. Right, so we've got the arches all curved up. The coach still goes through there. The other change was that we have evened out this curve a bit, and it's a lot more pleasing to the eye. Again, in real life, would a horse and coach or horse and wagon cart be able to get up the incline? So I've tried to make them as kind of gentle as possible. That, in real life you hope that a horse and cart would be able to manage that gradient. So that's one reason that we've curved this out. The other thing is with this doesn't show the parapet. This is the road level, and there is a reason for that, and I'll go into that at a later time. Anything else on here? Yep, the other change we had was the fact that when we put this on the model railway, this back end kept getting too close or touching where the back seam was going to go, and I kept having to twist it around. Now I'm not going to put dowels in here to keep it in place, but it was still too close. I was worried about it, you know, not settling properly, and I couldn't work out what the problem was. And then when I was making or having a look at the original mock-up, I put it down. It just happened to line up with the board, this board underneath, and I'll show you what the problem there was. So we've got a line, which is the front of this front, okay, and then it goes over the railway tracks, and then it should go in a straight line off there, and then this should all be parallel. And if this came off slightly to the front, that's fine, because it's away from the backboard. And you know what I'm going to say, don't you? This was actually not quite parallel, and that came off that way, and so when the back seam was in here, that line was getting too close to it. So all I've done, let's get rid of that before it blurs out the white. So by rebuilding this as well, I've managed to ease that round and make sure that that's at the right angle. And yes, it does come slightly away from the backboard, so I'm happy with that. As I say, the mock-up has come out quite well. If I could use that, I would, but I can't. So yeah, got to bite the bullet now and try and get this copied onto the Foamex. So we'll give that a go, shall we? The plan was to have this as a mock-up, and then to take it apart and lay it flat on the Foamex and then just trace around it. Now the original mock-up, as I said, came out with a few too many jagged lines and with the wrongly shaped arches and stuff. I thought that's fine, you can put it down. Will it come away in one part? Will it rip and then make more dinks and little bits to catch on? And so I thought, well, the idea is to take it apart and then measure out all these bits and then to draw it on paper and then cut the paper out as a template, put it onto the Foamex, and then to try and draw it onto the Foamex and then cut the Foamex out. Now I'm going to try a different way. I've got some Pritt stick, and what I'm going to do is I've got some thin card as well. And the wonderful thing about Pritt stick is it does stick paper together, but you can easily pull it apart again. So the idea now is to stick this on here, make sure the bottom's level and flat, and then once it's stuck on there, I will turn it over and trace out with a pen where it's got to go, and then I can turn it around and then draw out on this side as well, and all the curves and everything. That's going to be quicker than measuring it out. Also, it means that I'm not pulling this apart and there's no risk of damaging this. As I say, I don't want any tears in it or pull bits out of it and then have a ragged edge I've got to try and do. Once I've drawn it on here, then I can tidy up this piece of cardboard. This card will peel, well, I'm saying will. Normally, as I say, Pritt stick, you can peel the paper apart. So what we'll do is we'll gently peel that off, tied it up, cut round it, and then use this as a template for putting onto the Foamex. So we'll give that a go, shall we, and see how far we get. A bit messy. The Pritt stick is old, so when you're kind of taking it down, you always, with Pritt stick, you kind of rub it on and you get little bits coming off, but that was like glops coming off. It was yeah, it's been a bit messy, but it worked. So I've got it stuck on there. Maybe I should have let it dry a bit longer before I start drawing round, but I've ended up with a plan which is quite good. It needs a bit of fettling, so I can do that now by just taking measurements off the actual mock-up and then just adjusting the plan slightly. But that was so much quicker than taking it apart and measuring everything out and redrawing it, which might have ended up with a near perfect plan. But by the time I transfer this onto the Foamex and cut round it, I'm going to get bits that don't cut out straight as well. It's not going to be perfect. I haven't got something like I said the other time, I haven't got CAD with a laser cutter, so this has all got to be done by hand, and I will do it as neatly and to the best I can, but it's not, and it will never ever be perfect, and I've just got to realise that and live with it, haven't I? It's like a lot of us, I suppose. But yeah, talking about the Pritt stick being a bit runny, it's it's going to take a bit to dry before I can start just tidying up that plan. So it's 12:20. I normally lunch at 1, but 12:20, I mean, it's close enough, isn't it? So I'm going to go after lunch, come back and then tidy these plans up. And I've got to do the other side of the bridge as well, and I think I've still got some templates for the former for it. Now the former I am going to make out of plywood. I want something a bit more rigid, but there again, how do I stick Formex to plywood? I'm just going to have to practice and see, aren't I? Anyway, catch you after lunch. Right, back from lunch. Actually, it turned out to be 2 hours because the stepdaughter popped round. Why do you need to know that? Well, it's been 2 hours and this glue, this Pritt stick, is still sticky on it. It should have dried out by now, but it just shows how liquid and going off it is. So, but it's doing the job, isn't it? So now we're back. There's one thing. I did look at the clips I've done up so far, and I keep referring to that plastic as Formex, and it's not Formex, it's Fomex. Anyway, now we're back up here. I've started to use a straight edge, because obviously when you're tracing around cardboard it's quite soft and you can get dinks and marks in it and go underneath the lines, and you don't get your straight lines which I need for cutting. So I'm just going over them with a ruler and a pencil. To get the curves I've used the same thing. This had fish food in it sometime, and obviously that just does the arches. So I've just got this line to draw out, and then I'm going to cut this out and see how well it matches up to the prototype. So we'll just get this done if I can carefully. Obviously I can't use a ruler for this, but I just want to darken the line and fill in any gaps and try and get out any obvious big dinks. See, I just caught a bit of glue there, it doesn't want to draw on it. And the nice thing is, when I did this, I actually used just an arc, just swinging my arm around, and it seems to be doing more or less the same thing as so. I'm just darkening up the line, so when I come to cut it out I can actually see where I'm following and what I'm doing. So it wants to come off there, and again the glue's quite sticky. Right, that's drawn out, so I'm going to grab a scalpel and cut this out. So that's that cut out. There's a couple of little tiny bits that need tidying up on there, and it was a nightmare because that glue is still wet on the other side. But that's side one done, and that's the outside. I've marked this inside so I know that I don't cut it back to front when I actually do it on the Fomex. So you got it right that time. So I've got to repeat this on the other side of the mock-up. Actually, before we do that, what we'll do, maybe it's a good idea, this glue is still a bit tacky. Right, it's a bit tacky, so it's not quite lined up, but you can see there that it's pretty much on line. It's got to move up a bit and across a bit, because I've got an overhang that side and overhang that side. But if it all moved up a bit, then that's pretty good. I think that's enough for a template for cutting out the Fomex. So yeah, as I say, just got to do the other side, and then the base through here, I have got somewhere I believe that's it, or yeah, I think that was a new one, but I'll try it. I'll make sure I've got the right one so that I get that turn. Yeah, see, that sits in there quite nicely, and it's got the turn that brings it away from the back seam. So that I can use for cutting out the plywood. The only problem I've got with cutting out the plywood is then how I get these gaps. So it sits either side of the rails that go in. There's the 3 templates then already cut out and ready to transfer. The middle one will be on 6mm ply. That's to keep it a nice bit of rigidity and something firm to fix the Fomex onto. The problem there is going to be that I need to cut through it where the track goes through, so it's kind of keeping all that in place while I saw it through, and then still keeping it in place while I put the Fomex on it. Any offcuts of the Fomex will be used for spacers and strengtheners like this bit here, because obviously if I try and cut through the plywood here at the moment, once I put it in, the Fomex is just going to bend on places like this, and it's just going to wobble backwards and forwards. So I've got to get this cut with the slots and then get the Fomex mounted to it, then put some spacers in like that. Then I can cut out or take out the bits where the track's going to run, and the whole structure will be firm enough and it won't twist and bend on these narrow bits there. Right, it is the following day. So after doing the last clip, I had to take dog for a walk, but then I came back in the shed. I transferred the design of the walls onto the Fomex and cut them out. Now that was quite interesting as well, because this was a bit tougher than I realised, and yeah, it took a little bit of doing, but if you take your time, got a really sharp blade. I think I've replaced my blade about 8 times, but just take your time, be patient, and yeah, I got there in the end. It's taking lots of little cuts and not trying to dig the knife in and scrape it through. Just take it gently and slowly, bit of patience, and I got there in the end. So yeah, there's the 2 walls, and then we've got the outer plywood. We've now cut the former. Now this former will replace, and if I get the mock-up back, this piece of cardboard that runs right the way through and to here. And if I can quickly get that in place again. It's all getting caught up. Right, so that will sit roughly in there. As I say, it replaces the cardboard that will be in here. But if I leave it the way it is, as you can see, this gets in the way of the tracks for the trains to run through. So I've hatched those off so I know where the bits are. If I take that away and get rid of it again, these are the sections that have got to come out to let the track run through. What I've done is screwed a bit of 3mm ply on the back of it. So now I can cut through where these lines are down to the 3mm and leave these in place, because it helps stiffen them up and keep it in place. But I cut those lines out now, then I can glue it all together, glue the sides on, put some spacers in and some more kind of reinforcements, if you like, to keep it all in place and all in shape. And then once it's all solid, once it's all cured off, all the glue's cured and it's set solid, then I can just unscrew this bit from the back and these 2 sections will drop out, and as I say, that's where the track will go. That's the plan anyway. So what we've got to do now is decide how we're going to glue these onto there and what we're going to use. Right, so when I got in last night after walking the dog, I'm glued up some bits of this Fomex to see how it would go, and as you can see, I've got 3 different glues there. There should be a 4th one, whichever I've done with it, and that is there. Right, so the deluxe card glue, I forgot to stick some to the plywood, and it's actually, I tried it earlier, but it's getting there. Now I know that will work. It's a kind of rubbery glue, so I'm not sure how well it will do. It normally sticks quite well, but if I just try the Fomex, there's a little bit of movement on there, but it is holding it. So that's an idea for oh no, it's not, it's just snapped off, so it's not bonding. So I don't think I'll be using that to put to glue the Fomex bits in place. I think it would have been more successful if I'd given this time, but yeah, I've not been exactly fair with the old that was the deluxe rocket card glue, but it won't do the plastic, so we can get rid of that. Now the Yoo-hoo one, that's normally quite good. That normally does a load of stuff. So that's on the corner here, and I can hear it cracking already, so no, there's no strength to that. Now that's been there since, as I say, yesterday evening, and it's just not glued, it's not bonded into the wood at all. In fact, it just scrapes off, so it's no good for doing the Fomex to the plywood. How is it for doing plastic or Fomex to Fomex? That's quite rigid. Oh no, it's not. It snapped very, very easily. Right, so we'll get rid of the Yoo-hoo. Get rid of those bits of cardboard, they're just in the way. So I've got some of this, which is EMA Model Supplies Plastic Weld. Now that's what I use for most of my modelling. It's normally good for doing plastic, so that is not too bad. There was a little crack as I pushed it on there, but that is definitely a lot better. That's actually welding in. You can see it's just flexing now as I'm bending. It's not snapping, it's not cracking. So we can use that for putting the reinforcement and the spacers in between the two walls, so that's good. And then the other thing we use, I tried out, was Gorilla glue, which I thought might be a good idea, but then when you read the instructions, it actually takes 2 hours to go off and then 24 hours to cure properly. But I thought, we'll give it a try anyway. And again, that's held it. I'm putting a little bit of pressure on there, and that's definitely holding that. So that's good for there. And that is solid. That is really stuck in there. So to put all this together, it looks like a mixture of Gorilla Glue. That's just the Foamex bending, so that's all right. As I say, this takes 24 hours to actually glue, so go off and cure. So what we're going to go for is the Gorilla Glue, I think, for putting the Foamex onto the plywood, and then we use the plastic weld for putting the Foamex to Foamex. Right, now you and I expected the next bit of this video to be me gluing together that structure, and didn't happen, did it? Why? I was using this Gorilla Glue, and as I said, I read the back of it, and it says that it takes 2 hours to dry, 24 hours to cure. What it also says is that if you're using non-porous surfaces, you need to make it damp, give it a spray or something with water just to make it damp, and then put the two surfaces together, clamp it in place. Now when you add this to water, even if it's just dampness, it gets so slippery, and then trying to put that onto a curved surface when there's some tension there. Yeah, I've got some clamps. Yeah, so one of the problems was that I have a collection of clamps, and I'll just show you. There's one, there's two, there's three, there's another one here, which is more of a small model making one, isn't it? Craft one. But to call it a collection would indicate that it was an organised, carefully thought out bringing together of various clamps. As you can see, nothing like it. It's a complete mismatch, and some of these are pretty tough to operate. So yeah, trying to get these on that on the bridge, putting it together and trying to clamp it together while the glue, it just didn't work. That's why it slid all over the place, and why I got in such a mess. And because of the mixture of clamps and the size of the clamps, and there's a couple of model making ones there, but they weren't quite big enough to reach all areas. And when you just put it together, you put on a clamp and it squeezes it, and although you've lined it up, as it squeezes it and puts it round, forms it round one of the bends, it obviously moves. So you try and move it, and as you move it, it slips, and then the clamp comes off. So you play around with it again, you get it in place, and then you put the next one on, and the next curve, it pulls it again, so it puts it slightly out of line. And the foots or the pads on those clamps are quite big, and when you're trying to clamp against 6mm ply, you've got to get it dead square, otherwise it starts moving from side to side, and that's what was happening. I finally got it all in place, and then when I looked at it, one of the bits wasn't quite lined up, so I thought I'll very carefully do this, and just eased it off, and as I did that, the whole thing dropped out of my hand, landed on the floor, and that fascia, I think it was the front wall fascia, hit the ground with the clamps on top, and it just shattered. Now I was working at that for an hour and a half trying to put that together until I got to that point where it broke. It was just sliding all over the place. I just couldn't get it done. And then once I dropped it on the floor, I thought, this is stupid. I'm just wasting my time doing this, and it's time for plan B. So that's what we got on to. The plan now is, instead of using the plywood, I've cut out another former, and this is in the Foamex. And then this is the template from the original, so that fits that. Now it's cut out, so I know that's right. This, I've double checked, fits in here, if I can get it the right way around. So it's a little bit tight on there, but I'm not too worried about that. But it fits, it's the right shape, it fits in there, and there's no problems with that. And then now I've cut out the Foamex former. That's the village end, that's the yard end, so that goes in. And again, as I say, it's a little bit tight, but cutting these out by hand is not an exact science, so that fits in there. So it needs a little bit of shaving off there, but I'm not too worried about that. So I know everything fits. So we'll try sticking this together, and I think I'm going to do that up in my little hobby room. It's not a hobby room, it's the back bedroom, but the wife's got a desk there, I've got a desk there, so I think that's probably the best place to glue this up. And the glue I'm going to use is the plastic weld, which seemed to work quite hard, and the bits I've played around with yesterday are still nicely glued together. And I think I'm going to bibs and braces this, and I'm also, once it's together, I'm going to run a bead of the hot glue gun around it as well, so I really make sure it's firm. And this is obviously soft enough that once it's all glued in place, hopefully I can cut out the apertures I need to get the track in place. As you can see, it's finally together. It's taken about 2 or 3 hours up here, and I've taken it very carefully. The way I did it was actually to get one of the side pieces, put it down and get the former in the middle, glue a little bit, then rock it, glue another bit more, rock it, glue it, rock it a little bit more, glue it. And so I've built it up quite slowly. Straight edges are right, you just squeeze them together and put the glue in there. But I was worried about this popping apart. So what I've actually done is, I don't know if you can see this on here, but I'll take a shot of it anyway, but I've scored it. Now this was a bit more successful than I thought. I did try a bit down in the shed, and when I scored it and then bent it, it actually snapped. Now I did have one problem there, and I think it's, if you just manage to break the skin, the plastic skin on top, it's not too bad. These aren't huge curves either, so it's not really forcing the foam in the middle apart. But it's done. I've taken it down to the shed and it does fit, but I've just had to make these arches a little bit bigger. The coaches were going through, but by the time I get the brick lining on them, it's going to be a bit tight for getting those coaches through. Well, sorry for the abrupt end to that. My fault. I got a bit carried away. I finished the structure and I thought, oh, I'll start cladding it now. But I didn't want to go any further. There's been a lot in this video, and I'm worried about the time. I haven't seen the time on it yet, obviously, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's running into half an hour, 45 minutes. So it was time to stop it. Otherwise, you lot would just get bored if you haven't done already. And I don't want to lose your interest. So the cladding, I did carry on with it. I had a little break and then came back up to the back bedroom, the little den office thing we've got, and I've clad the brick. But that is for the next video. So all I've got to do with that video is just finish tidying the editing. As I said, it wasn't a plain sailing building that structure. There was a fair few things went wrong. I learnt a huge amount, and that's something that this hobby is about. We don't want to just crash through it and just build and everything turns out perfectly right away. We want something that taxes us a bit, makes us think a bit, try new things, try new glues, try new materials, try new ways of doing things. And I've certainly done that. So yeah, it's built. And there's not too much more I can say, really, is there? It's built, the cladding's out, the video will be out next week. So I'm going to wind it up. As I say, this is probably getting a bit too long anyway, this video. So just before I do sign up, all I want to do is say, good night, Chloe, sweet dreams. That's if you're still with us. To the rest of you, thank you for watching again. Thank you for staying with me. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.